Because you know your scripts.
Are we live?
All right. Because you know your scripts. I like that. So for
Did
those,
I say that or did you say that?
you said that. No, you said you're always ready. I said because you know your scripts, in which that was the whole part about the touche part about what we're going to talk about today. And you were feeling like we weren't prepared. And I said, well, we practice often enough, so technically we are.
Okay, we'll see. So role play.
Yeah. So today's topic, role play. So let's begin with should we, shouldn't we, how should we? You know, maybe let's just cover should we or shouldn't we, and kind of the aspects of it. What's kind of involved in it?
I can nail this one right here. What did I ask you this morning?
Send you a schedule so we can role play more often.
So obviously I'm seeing the value and the lack of it in my own life. What do you do on Fridays at 9 a.m.?
I role play.
Yes.
Yes. And for the rest of the audience, I actually role play every day. I practice at home alone.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I should try that.
Yeah. I actually pull the mirror out and I will listen to something for a little bit, figure out terminology and things like that, and then I give it a little bit of practice. I would say I'm probably 20 to 30 minutes a day.
That's fantastic. Recently, I listened to a top producer, and he talked about the importance of role playing. He didn't even get his business started until he knew it flat.
Yep.
It made an impression upon me.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we talking about?
Yeah. 6 months straight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jordan Cohen. Thank you, Jordan. So, yeah. I mean, if you don't know what you're going to say, you're going to get caught up.
Yes. And I agree with that partially, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think one of the biggest things I see in role play when I'm working with agents and actually going over role play is that they focus so much on what they're going to say, they're not present to the conversation.
Oh, wow.
And they actually miss what's going on.
So listening is a big part
Yep.
of being good at role play, or just being present, I guess.
It's being present, and I think I guess I flip it a little bit and say that you should have your presentation and when I use the word scripts, I don't mean I am by no means a Daniel Penley when A says this, B says this type thing, but the subjects usually tend to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
The
Absolutely.
Objections usually tend to be the same. So you should have different ways that you handle these things when they do come up and be able to recognize them and understand it. But you should have that so ingrained in you that you are able to just be present to what they're saying. Because I think that's where most people mess up, is that they're actually not present to what the person's saying and they take it in a completely different direction.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's like the Friends episode when Phoebe decides she's going to be a telemarketer.
I did not.
And she gets Jason Alexander's a guest star, and he's on the other end.
Right.
And she does her thing, like, hey, this is so-and-so with such and such company. Would you like to do this? And Jason Alexander responds, no, but I think I'm going to kill myself. And she looks at her script book, and she's like, flip. Doesn't know what to say. I thought that was classic.
That is.
But I think it's a lot about, okay, let's see here. Your role play, the feedback that I get is that it is powerful because it is conversational.
Right.
And of course, it's going to, like you said, it's going to hit on the same objections and topics.
Right.
Because it's rare that we get something that we're not already aware is going to come at us.
Correct.
Many times we're not prepared, but we should know.
Right.
Just get the same objections. But when you do a Daniel Penley or you do a Mike Ferry, it's like, all right, go. And they're all spitting out the exact same responses
Yes.
to all of these objections, which is okay. I mean, that's actually great. If you're doing it, you're a step ahead of a lot of people. But what about the second objection on that same topic?
Right.
And then it's like, right?
And
which is what you get to in your role play. It's conversational. You're going through a series of things. Whereas I feel like these other ones are, no, the response comes out, even if you've got it in your own words and it feels and it
Right.
sounds comfortable, but it's terminus.
Right, right.
You know, there's no opportunity for a little bit further selling.
Correct. Well, and thank you. First of all, I appreciate that, and thank you to those that do attend and the positive feedback that we're getting. I appreciate that. So I guess one of the things that I always look at when we're having those conversations is what happens is people get stuck, because you're right. That first objection comes, they answer that objection, and then a follow-up comes to it, and they get lost and they don't know what to say. And in reality, part of I'm digging a little bit here, and I'll just come out and say it. I guess I'll say it this way, Travis. I question whether we've all been trained or educated properly in this business, because here's the pushback that I get. Well, we've always done it this way, and this is how we do it, and so many of us do it. That doesn't mean that was the right way. Mm-hmm. That just means that's
a way.
A way, and that's how a lot of people were taught. And I'll give you an example. One of the other ones, or one of the ones I was working on the other day, is the typical when you're getting no's, ask a series of questions where you can get yes to. Yes. Get a yes, get a yes, get a yes, and then go in for the close. And I argue that that's not the best way to approach the business, because you're on the other end. You've been solicited before.
It was just before I came in here. I got a recruiting call.
Right. And
so I always listen to them.
Me too. I always listen to them as well, because I always pay attention to what's getting my attention, what's actually getting my attention in the recruiting call, and what's an actual turnoff. And what we fail so often to realize is that when we're amongst our fellow agents, and another one of my favorites, when we're amongst our fellow agents and, hey, will you cut your commission? No. Next question.
Yeah, that's Mike Ferry.
Yeah. And the whole room cheers and applauds you. Well, those are your fellow agents, but you're being kind of a butt to an actual homeowner if that's really how you handled it. And I'm sorry, you're going to walk away more than likely losing, because you left a bad taste in their mouth. The two parts of everything when it comes to role play is our first impression, which everybody always talks about the first impression, but here's what nobody ever talks about is, what was the last impression you left? Because when you leave that situation, they don't remember 90% of what we said.
Yeah. What do they do? Like, maybe the wife or the husband standing in the background, the other is like, thank you very much for coming by, Nestor. Oh, you're welcome. We'll be in touch. They shut the door. They let you out the door. They shut it.
Yep.
I'd say 95% of the time, the wife or husband turns around to their spouse and says, and that's what you want to know.
Right.
You want to hear, I really like that guy or gal.
Exactly.
Right? Or, oh, what a disaster that was,
right.
huh?
Can you believe?
That's just a feeling.
Right.
That's all it is.
Can you believe they said it like that, or that they, whatever the case, and unfortunately behind the scenes, that's what's really happening. Yeah. And then we are shocked when we don't get the phone call back, or shocked that they gave it to somebody else. So that's really what role play is about, is really understanding these things and kind of the nuances of what's really happening behind the scenes. You should know in the very beginning, or at least very early on, if what I'd like to call the favorite or the fool. You're either the favorite going into this situation, or you're the fool going into the situation thinking that you are the favorite, but you're really not, and you're there for another reason. And the other reason could be, your brother's doing the transaction for you. He's just out of area and doesn't know the price or anything around here, so you just needed somebody to get that information from. Yeah, you got it handled. No worries. I'll call the area experts out here. They'll come in, give the presentation, and we know that happens, right? But we can leave that situation thinking we actually had a chance or had an opportunity, because we never asked the right questions, and we left it thinking we're their favorite.
Yeah.
And in reality, we weren't.
Yep. It's as much about asking questions as it is about listening.
Correct. So.
Wow. Very good. Well, another thing I learned is that not only do we need to role play, whether it's on your own, which I'd say is good.
Right.
With someone else, I'd say it's better.
Right.
but also writing down some scripts.
Yes.
Like each day reminding yourself about this. And as I was doing this, I was thinking, okay, am I going to do this? Am I going to type these out or am I going to write them out? And I've realized there's something about that pen on paper that is so much different than typing something out.
Yep.
So I'm going to argue that you should be writing out your scripts. And it's repetitive, of course, it's going to be because we know the objections, but to be able to do it as you're writing is very powerful. And so I might suggest you do that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, here's what happens when you write them out. You start to look at them and you start to naturally adjust them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the message is clear of what you're saying when you write it out, but all of a sudden you start to look at it and say, oh, well, I can say this better by changing this or changing that.
Yeah.
And then you actually start to learn that process. So I give a secret I tell everybody. Bathroom mirror. That's where I write mine. If I come up with an idea or a script or something or a line that I think works or a scenario, I just write it down there. I'm staring at it several times a day, and then I just practice it when I'm there, and it naturally presents itself in front of me without me even having to try. And then once I feel like I've gotten it, I erase it, put something else up there. That's my secret.
Nice. You should probably memorialize it somewhere, though, right? Before you erase it.
When I feel like I've got it,
list.
yes. When I feel like I've got it, it almost to the point where it's a memorization for me. And I don't like to say that there are certain parts of our presentation that I feel that we should practice, that it makes sense to try to always say it the same way. Mm-hmm. But once I feel like it's mine and I can own it, then yeah, I usually delete it altogether. Because for me, I also think that role play is an evolution and we evolve. So I want to naturally continue to try to get better, and trying to get better is taking something that I thought was great 6 months ago and making that even better. You know, there was a time in my career where I thought getting 3 yeses in a row was the best approach. You know, now I shoot for the nose. I rather get no's, and a lot of people won't understand that. But if I can ask the same question that I'm asking in yes for, if I can ask it in a no, or to get you to answer no, which basically means yes, you're more comfortable. Because psychologically, we have no problem saying no.
Yeah.
And we actually put our defenses down when we say it. So, anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think times change, markets change.
Yes.
And so we've always got to be on top of that. And it does change how we approach, how we discuss things with prospects.
Absolutely.
Sellers. And so you got to be on top of that. It's not always going to be the exact same thing. I had something else to say, and then that came in my head, and now I've totally forgot what I was going to say. Okay, so writing down scripts, and then, what I like, and I think this is a big part of what you do on Fridays, is you get to hear, just different ways, right?
Yes.
It's not like this is the way you need to do it.
Correct.
But someone's like, I would never do that, but here's what I would do, you know, and you can get into your comfort level and you can start to get those stories, because a lot of the stories, right?
Exactly.
So, let me tell you about that. Have you ever?
Right.
And this is why, and da-da-da-da-da. So when you have those internalized, that's really powerful as well.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that the flip side of that, because here's what happens. I say it this way, and you can poll the room at the end. Yep, that worked for me. Yep, that worked for me. Nope, didn't work for me. Nope, didn't work for me. And the feedback that's important to understand in that scenario is you have to be able to read the crowd and read the person that you're actually having that, because what worked for them to actually get pen on paper and signature, they were an absolute no, and it was a turnoff for them. And that's because they're speaking 2 different languages, and that's what happens when we get pigeonholed into that one approach. It's really not necessarily about the one approach. It's about understanding who's on the other side and what's best for them, and what do they relate to the best. And so it's not just, like we go a lot into that, personality traits and things of that nature, but part of this is having to be able to just on the fly understand who's on the other side of the table.
Personalities are great. ISTP, by the way, if anyone wants to get onto my personality. But it's reading the person.
Yes.
So you don't have to necessarily be like, oh, wait, what are they? And get all complicated and memorize these personality charts and everything. You can mirror, and that's going to do a lot for you. Or you can do it real simply. I think you can get it down to almost 2 personalities. You can get more detailed, but I think it covers pretty much everybody when you say analytic or social.
Yep.
Those really define most people.
I almost had the same 2 words. I'm analytical or emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are they making an analytical decision or are they making an emotional decision? And then, obviously if there's more than one person in the room, then it can become a little tricky who's the true decision maker within there. And
excuse me, could you share with me today, who's the real decision maker between the 2 of you? Don't do that. That's a bad line.
But there are ways to discover it. There are ways to figure that part out. So, but yeah, no.
So, in review,
Okay.
scripts are important.
Yes.
Role playing.
Yes. I would say
Important.
scripts are important in your own words.
Yes.
Yes.
And updating and editing regularly,
Yes.
because they all demand that. On your own's good. With a partner's better. In addition, write them down every day. Write down 3, 4, 5 different scripts, so to speak,
Right.
to internalize them better.
Absolutely. And we will drop the link below because we use the same Zoom link every single week. So if you're interested, you happen to see this, role plays are every Friday at 9 a.m. If you happen to hit the link and we're not there, we took that Friday off for whatever reason.
That's a rarity, I would say.
It is very rare. But we're there every week, 9 a.m. Pacific time. So
Yeah, be a fly on the wall if you want. Don't be afraid to check in and just see how things go. I think they'll get sucked in pretty quickly, though.
Yes.
It's a pretty powerful meeting.
yeah. All right. Thank you, guys.
Get out there and make it happen.
And would love to hear your feedback.